Welcome back, everybody. This is Brian and Mr. Boettcher for Breaking Down Security.
What's up?
Well, not much.
I like it that our names are the same because I can talk about myself in the third person and then I'm actually talking about you.
Allow myself to introduce myself.
Well, it would be more like, yeah, Brian's not feeling too good today. I don't know what his problem is.
That's a Seinfeld episode. Speaking in the third person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's it's another week. So another week comes more knowledge.
What are we? What kind of knowledge are we going to try and distill on each other?
Oh yeah, we're definitely distilling it because it's something that, to be fair, I don't know a lot about, and it's SNMP.
Yeah. I didn't know a lot about it either until I started, prepping for the podcast, and wow, it's powerful stuff. At first, I thought it was very challenging. The name, the acronym starts with the word simple. It was anything but simple at first, but then under the covers, it's not so simple.
Yeah. Why do they say that? Why is something that starts with simple needlessly, maybe in some cases complex? Was it a marketing thing? I just don't understand.
I think they just wanted to make it easier for everyone to manage their systems on their networks. So they called it simple. And, when you're using it with the right tools, it is pretty easy. It makes it easier because you can manage thousands of nodes. And you won't have to go, for example, data centers would have thousands of hard drives in them. And if a hard drive fails, you wouldn't have to go around physically looking at all your lights, looking, for something other than green. I guess they're amber. So you go around looking for amber lights, and then you write down, the address of that particular machine and what light it is. And then you'd go to the owner of that machine and say, hey, you got a hard drive that's failed. I need to replace it. And of course, you're in a degraded state. So if another one fails, you're SOL. So SNMP is going to help you. You get an alert right away, and you're able to quickly alleviate that situation and get yourself out of a sticky situation fast.
Yep. So SNMP is the Simple Network Managed Protocol, if we haven't mentioned that already. And it's old. It's older than TCP dump when we talked about TCP dump a couple of weeks ago. It was created, the first RFC, the request for comments, 1157, was May 1990.
Yeah, and I think it was first being built in around 88. So yeah, 90 seems right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is. I think it was going to be replaced by something better at some point, but SNMP became such widely used that they said, well, we can't really replace it now. I mean,
yeah,
kind of like fossil fuels. Everybody's got cars, so we can't replace them with anything else.
Yeah, and I'd imagine in 1990 the networks were not nearly as complicated as they were today. So the idea was you wanted to manage a budding network, so you created this protocol to allow you to watch your couple of dozen servers, and it was simple enough to manage. SNMP comes as usually part of a larger package. I know one of the ones that we have used at offices that I've been at in the past was like Tivoli, where you would install an agent on a host, or HP OpenView was a big one with the Navy. I know when I was in the Navy, we had HP OpenView. You installed an agent, and then you turned on the HP OpenView management server and prayed that it would actually connect to the agent. So they all pretty much work that way. You have an asset with an agent running on it, whether it be a printer, a switch, a hub, a router. There's modules inside the network devices that send out the SNMP information, and and then it gets collated at the management server.
Yeah, exactly. You can the host machine, whatever machine it is, will have an agent running on it, and it can send traps, what's called traps, to the management server, which has an application running on it that receives SNMP traps and sends SNMP commands.
Now a trap is what? It's a rule, like a firewall rule, right? So that when it gets a certain threshold, or
Yeah, yeah, it's like an alert. So if a certain threshold is met on whatever, it's a rule on the agent or on the device. And when a certain threshold is met, like, oh, your disk failed or your drive space is 80%, things like that, it'll send a trap to the SNMP management console that's running in, and then that takes the information and based on rules on that decides whether you get an email, a page, or you hear this.
That's never a good thing.
Yeah.
You never want to hear that. Yeah.
So and now some devices have routers, I guess would be an example. They have the agent kind of built in to the hardware itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cisco has that. Yeah, Cisco has several of those.
So sure. I as I was reading up on it, I didn't think agents would have to be on the device themselves. They could manage multiple devices. I'm sure that's a possibility, but it's built so that it's spread out and it all correlates into one system.
It's the MIB, the Management Information Base?
Yes, Management Information Base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's actually 3 parts to the SNMP, at least for V1 in this case. They have the structure of management information, and you can identify data types with that and rule creations, so that the MIB, the Management Information Base, can then go, okay, these are things that are important to this asset, whether it be, drive space, RAM, temperature and cooling, if your fans on your CPU are not running, or if they froze up, or any kind of environmental data. You can plug your HVAC systems into all of this. I mean, the idea was SNMP was supposed to help data centers. You need less people to run it because you wouldn't have to have somebody going around making sure that all the hard drive lights aren't amber or green instead of amber or what have it.
Yeah. And for clarity, it's not the management information base that's the central hub. It's called the network management station.
Oh.
That usually has it's used as a central communications point, which typically hosts management software that utilizes SNMP.
Yeah.
Usually the network management station talks to multiple agents, deployed all over the environment. The management information base, I guess, is sort of like a database of things that can be controlled or information that can be garnered. So it's typically a text file of configurations on the device. That would be the management information base.
Okay. All right. I'm glad we figured that one out because, I have not, to be honest, I have never had to deal with SNMP. But yeah, and as they got more complicated, I think the simple network management protocol got less simple because,
oh yeah,
well, I mean, it's like when you're doing PCI and you have to do logging. It's important for all the logs to get into the log collector. You've got hundreds of servers. They all have an agent for logging running on them. They all send to a centralized log server. That's very much how SNMP works. It's very hierarchical. That's my word for the day, hierarchical. It goes from, the one level up to another. And there will always be problems. You will always have, unless you've built it from the ground up with SNMP installed, tacking it on is sometimes a very difficult proposition and takes a lot of man hours to get this stuff set up properly and right. dialed in because you get false positives on that as well.
Yeah, it's always easier to start from the ground up. And I just got reminded, I went to a talk with Michael Goff, and he said, I don't want to go in and build something from scratch. I just want to fix what's there. I need to ask him about that. I thought we went on a tangent here. Sorry about that. But I'm wondering why that is, why he just want to fix what's there and not build something from scratch. You would think that, even in programming, I'd rather start at the beginning and not have to fix someone else's screw-ups or, mistakes or things they didn't know about.
I wondered about that. And, when you're starting a new project, if you already have some things in place, maybe you're 30 to 40% of the way there. And then if you can take the little ancillary tasks or processes that are there that are not fully realized, and build upon those, enhance those. Perhaps you don't have to spend as much time and effort to get to 100% if you're already at 30% or 40%. Well, of course,
some people say you in order to get it right, you have to tear down what's there, and it's, you're adding 30%, so you really have to do 130%. So
yeah, well, maybe it's just something you want to look at and see if it's worth keeping before you just blow it up and start over. Nuke it.
I think it's harder to fix something than to rebuild it, or start from scratch in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So let's talk about SNMP a little more.
Yeah. So we're a security podcast, but we like to talk about technology in the enterprise that is has to do with security, and SNMP would be something you'd want to deal with. You want your network managers to have that capability from a security standpoint.
From a production standpoint, you sure want them to have the ability to simply manage things. But that word manage, that's where security comes into play, because you want the right people to manage those devices, and at the same time, you don't want the wrong people to manage those devices. So you need to make sure that this is set up in a secure manner, and that you're constantly monitoring and you have controls, layered controls around your SNMP setup.
Yep.
So it's important that you understand how it works. That way you can make sure that you're doing everything you can to keep it secure and out of the wrong hands.
Man, I'm so glad that SNMP is fully realized and comes with all kinds of necessary encryption.
Yes, it has the best encryption ever, and you just push the buttons and it automatically does its thing, and it can't be broken.
Now, see, what do you see? I set you up there, and you're supposed to knock it back out of the park. SNMP doesn't have encryption. At least the first two versions, which are the most widely used.
That is a true statement.
SNMP versions 1 and 2C, which is the next generation of SNMP, is in plain text, which when I'm not stupid, I have heard of SNMP, I just never use it. But the first time I'd ever heard of it, back when I was in the Navy and we were trying to set up HP OpenView, all I could think of was, that's not very good, because I knew enough about sniffing network traffic at the time that if I was listening on Wireshark or something, you can actually see what they call the community strings, which allow you to make changes to, say, a router config. If you have the RW string, the read-write string, you've sniffed it off of the network traffic that's going across when somebody's making changes to a network.
Yeah, which all you had back then were hubs, right? So you could listen to all traffic on the network.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, switches were like, ooh, switches, because 10100 hub was the way the Navy was doing things when I was in there. So
that's right. And I even had a switch hub that you could switch between switch and hub. That was pretty cool. You push a button and it would be a switch.
That was a Netgear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the
I was
purple
proud of
Netgears. Yeah. Wow, that's fancy. Pushing a button and it's a switch, and then it's not. Yeah, so that's one thing you have to worry about when you're using SNMP, that your traffic is going to be sniffed or can be sniffed.
It could be, yeah.
And using the read write, that's supposed to be like the private string. Yeah. Where you can do whatever you want to the configuration on a router. You can zero out a router's configuration using SNMP commands, or you can get information from a router that you may not necessarily want people to get.
Sure, you can rewrite your MIB, your management information base.
That's right.
So there's three main commands in SNMP. There's the get, which gets information that comes from the network management station. There's set, and that sets the information on the MIB. And then, of course, there's the trap, which comes from the agent to the management station.
Now, there are ways, I guess, you could get around that. So we have an SNMP set up in our brand new spanking fancy data center and we haven't put on V3 yet. How would we secure SNMP against somebody gaining access to the read-write string? Because that would be a question. That's a defense thing, right? Because that's what we're about. We're trying to help defend, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
So
I would think so. So you're asking, how would you defend something that's indefensible, like having clear text commands going across the wire?
Yep. I mean, if I was the security guy at an organization and we found out that somebody can sniff a read-write string right off of the network, how would we go about making it so that that cannot occur again?
Oh, I don't know, Brian. What do you think can be done about that?
Well, I says to myself when I was sitting here, I was trying to figure out how I would do that. And my first thing would be network isolation.
Yeah.
Most systems have multiple NICs, especially if they're a high-end server or a network device. So I would look.
You can't prevent it. You can only mitigate it.
That's right. So you can reduce the risk. Exactly. So sure. I would do something like maybe doing some network isolation. Have a management segment that is not touchable or not reachable by regular people.
Okay.
At least for the network devices, because not a lot of desktops have that capability. So for the network devices, I would have some kind of network management segment that was partitioned off or VLANed off from the rest of the network that would just send the traps and information through that network segment. That would be one way I would think about it.
Yeah, you can really lock down your network management station. Make sure it's a single device that is only used for that. Don't put your SharePoint server on it.
Yep. Don't make it accessible to, don't let the internet be able to get to it,
Yeah, two-factor authentication, only need-to-know basis. Maybe 2 guys have access to it, and that's it.
Yep. You really want to make it like a Fort Knox kind of thing, because you can do all kinds of things with that. You can push patches. You can add new ACLs to routers and such. I don't know. Could you think it would be possible to do something like SSH tunneling the SNMP traps?
Possibly, depending on your devices. You could probably do it if they're servers, but as far as network devices, they don't have much flexibility there. When I say network devices, I mean like firewalls, routers, switches. You probably couldn't set up some sort of a tunnel like that for SNMP.
I know SSH daemons do run on switches and routers, like Cisco switches and routers. I wonder if you're
talking older versions right now. So V3 has the capability for encryption on the communications, but V1 and 2 don't. And I would expect that network gear that only has V1 and 2 probably doesn't have SSH, or maybe they have SSH V1, something like that. So you're probably in a situation where they're using Telnet and nothing else to access the network devices.
The other thing I thought about with SNMP is the implementation. When you're making your passwords for your read-write and your read-only string, you probably should reduce the amount of time that you use the read-write string and just use the read-only string, because there's a lot less damage that can be done just having the read-only string, the community string, rather than the private or read-write string.
Yeah.
So you want to try to reduce, you don't want to use the admin password a lot. You want to reduce the amount of admin password use, for instance. So
that's right. You probably want to change your passwords regularly.
Yep.
Every couple of weeks, even, depending on the risk you're willing to take with it. And then you want to have a plan to upgrade.
I wonder how hard it is to change those on each device. If you have to go to each individual device, or can you just push out a new, update?
You should be able to push out a new update from the management console.
Yeah.
That may be a way to hack things like routers.
Yeah. I really want to get somebody on in the next couple of weeks, maybe, that we can talk about SNMP. because
Yeah.
I've heard in the news that there was actually it was 2011. I had actually remembered that this was the case, and I found the article on PC World. But they were doing DDoS attacks using SNMP. Like you've heard Cloudflare. They're called DDoS, bulletproof DDoS type providers, because people are using DNS for amplification attacks. SNMP devices that are open to the internet, apparently there are quite a few, enough that you can cause a 1,700% amplification. If you send one packet, you're going to get 1,700 packets back. With regard to, if you do like a bulk, according to the PC World
So
article,
you're going to get 1,700 packets back?
Yeah. So.
You're talking about IP spoofing, where you would spoof an IP that you want to DDoS, and then he gets the return traffic.
Yeah, except you're using SNMP, the SNMP protocol to do it. So I'm going to put a link to the PC World article in the show notes, but so here, let me read this. It says, one of the tools used to launch recent attacks created in 2011, this was in 2011, by a hacker group called Team Poison. They send spoofed SNMP GET bulk requests to publicly accessible SNMP-enabled devices to trigger responses that can be more than 1,700 times larger than the original request.
Okay. So what they're doing is they're requesting information from the MIB. So they'll do a simple GET request, and it sends them a flood of stuff like, hey, I want to download this, and then you get the download.
Yeah.
Boom.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. Who would want to put... I wonder if these SNMP-enabled devices were improperly configured, or if they're on the internet on purpose.
I can't think of a scenario where you want to put them on the internet on purpose. You want to block those things from both entering and exiting.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I don't know what they've done to mitigate that, though.
Yeah, according to the dude in the article that they interviewed, Sean Powers, security operations manager, he says legitimate SNMP traffic has no need to leave your network and should be prevented from doing so. This attack exists because many organizations fail to prevent this. So this is just like we were talking about with firewalls and IDSs. People aren't monitoring their egress. So they get an SNMP request from somebody. They're not setting up their firewalls properly, and it allows for SNMP traffic to leave their enclaves, their networks.
Depending on what the attackers were trying to DDoS, right? Was it inside the network or was it outside?
I'd imagine with like with the DNS ones, it was they were trying to bring websites down, like Feedly or people trying to attack folks who were against Reddit.
But like you said, you need to limit the traffic going in and going out.
Mm-hmm.
So that would prevent something like that. Now, if they compromised a box on the inside and they were attacking another box on the inside, there's not too much you can do about that.
Yeah.
That particular scenario by, controlling your traffic in and out. So what are some security issues with SNMP? That type of DDoS attack.
Yeah, well, we talked about the plain text. It's all in plain text, so it can be sniffed.
But version 3, I think, comes with, or it can be encrypted, right?
It does have encryption, and it does have authentication based on a hash, but it's SHA-1, or it will use MD5 as well. So, we've seen instances where MD5 can be used to... there's collisions in MD5, and SHA-1's starting to become deprecated. I haven't read anywhere where they're using higher order hashes like SHA-256 or what have you. So you could actually, I don't know, if you caused a hash collision with SNMP, you could actually become that device, right? That's how that works?
I'm not sure. That would be really hard, even with MD5, to find a hash collision. We'd have to do more research on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So all the versions, even V3, does not implement a challenge response handshake. So
Really?
what that means is at a random interval, the server will challenge the client, and they'll have to know the secret code.
Yeah.
So they'll hash it and send it along with like uh, a salt that the
See,
server sends.
I didn't know that it didn't do any kind of handshake. So you could just send out an SNMP trap, and the management server will just take it.
Yeah, and in V3, well, it can be encrypted. So if it doesn't
Yeah.
decrypt, then it can't take it, obviously. But
Hmm. I wonder if you could do some kind of malformed request. If it's like UDP where you don't have well, it's not connectionless, is it? It runs on port 161 and 162, but is that is it a UDP or is it a TCP kind of thing?
I think it comes with both. I mean, since it does implement UDP,
Mm-hmm.
you can do those kinds of IP spoofing
Yeah.
attacks. So yeah,
Now, see, the little gray head in me wants to find an SNMP server and do some kind of malformed attack or something to see if you could run some kind of remote code or make the. I know that there are buffer overflows in SNMP, so if you could overflow a buffer, like if you know that a certain field has 12 characters and you could put more than 12 characters in that field,
yep.
you know.
So then that goes into the next command or whatever command when it runs. Yeah, I suppose that's possible. So yeah, I guess what else? An attacker can force SNMP v3 to use a particular pair of keys for encryption and authentication.
I put that in there and I'm reading it again and I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that. I would assume you can send the same hash as somebody else because if they're using if it's a public if the keys are a public private key pair kind of thing, you could force somebody to masquerade as someone else. So it'd be like me logging into a server with your keys. And I could say, I don't care what keys you use, but you're going to use mine. And the thing goes, Jawohl. And then, I mean, if that's true, I'm not a fan of this SNMP thing. It sounds like even V3 doesn't sound all that well thought out, you know?
Well,
We
it's something we definitely have to get more information on.
we need
I
to get
mean,
an SME or somebody who deals with this on a regular basis in. So
yeah. So basically, for our viewers, we thought it would be valuable to give you guys a primer on SNMP because it's, highly likely something you'll have to deal with in the future. And when an exploitation occurs, I think you and I were discussing this beforehand, it would be disastrous. I mean, it could be total ownage of your network if that were the case. I'm talking, someone takes control of a router and then they're able to redirect traffic anywhere they want, sniff any type of traffic, and you'd be in bad shape at that point. So I think it's really important that you get a handle on SNMP before something disastrous happens.
yeah, you know what, and like us, if you're not all up on SNMP, you should try to get a hold of your network administrators who probably are, managing your SNMP infrastructure.
Or at least for their devices, yes.
Yeah, and maybe pick their brains, take them out to lunch, ask them some questions about what they do and how SNMP works, because they may think that they're all alone in this, but if they have somebody who can help them get information they need, maybe they need to upgrade this version 3 of SNMP, and you find out, oh, we've got a massive SNMP implementation, but it's running plain text. And he's like, yes, I've been trying to get this upgraded for years, but nobody will listen to me. You can actually help
There's
each other.
Opportunities there. Yeah, and it's not just for managing network devices. You can manage a lot of devices, and it's primarily used for monitoring, like we talked about. I know Spiceworks has a monitor that utilizes SNMP, and it's free.
Yep, and
So,
Windows has a service, I believe, in Windows 20
Oh, that's
Windows
right.
servers.
Windows 7 actually has an SNMP service running. It's not on by default, but you can turn it on. It's manual.
Yep. And of course, there's Linux has SNMP daemons as well for monitoring device, infrastructure on their hosts. So there's also Nagios. Nagios is a free network monitoring package you can use. I know that there's several ports and packages for Nagios. There's a program called SNMP Walk, which I believe is a tool you can get in Kali Linux, or you can build it yourself. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And then you've got Tivoli and HP OpenView, which are the big ones. They're big, expensive, wieldy pieces of fun with Oracle database backends and several dozen servers needed to make things work. So you can go from very simple to very complex, simple network management protocols. So
that's right.
Yep. So
simple.
I think that's as much as we feel comfortable talking about SNMP with so far. We definitely are going to try to get an SME or somebody who's given a recent talk, say at a security convention, about SNMP and how he or she uses that to hack systems
and defend systems.
That's right.
And you can look for ports 161 and 162.
That's right.
On your network to see if you're utilizing that. And you can change the ports. I think the secure ports are 1061 or 10161. I have to Google it.
Okay.
So
while you're Googling that, I will put out the we're on the internet. We both have Twitter handles. Mine's at Brian Brake. Mr. Boettcher's is at BoettcherPwned. We have Facebook page, facebook.com/breakingdownsec. And, we like feedback. We love feedback. So please feel free to contact us with that information if you think that there's something we could do better. Or, if you want to give us some kudos, which we've got some kudos recently that really made me feel great. Somebody we highly respect. And, everyone likes to hear they're doing a good job. So if you think we're doing a good job, please let us know that. You can email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com. That's our official Gmail email site. And I think we're going to leave you with some DerbyCon interview, right? Mr. Boettcher did a short interview with our good friend and friend of the podcast and CEO of Secure Ideas, Kevin Johnson. It's actually going to be a bit of a fun for me because I haven't heard it either. So I got busy and didn't. So I'm sorry. That's it for this week. We'll just go out with the interview with Kevin Johnson, and we hope you have a great week, and we'll come back soon.
Thanks everybody, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye. I'm at DerbyCon with Kevin Johnson. I caught up with him, and I want to ask you, Kevin, a while back, I guess it was almost a year ago, I asked you about your thoughts on the state of security. And I think your exact words were, the state of security today scares the crud out of me. Have things changed, or how do you think the trends are right now?
Well, I'm actually worried about the trends right now because security's getting better. We're always improving, but then we're finding other things that are bad and finding other things that are problems. But what really concerns me right now is I feel that the security industry is an industry flailing around for validity. And we see things like Robert Graham scanning the internet and running arbitrary code without permission. Isn't that awesome? And then, of course, he can stand up and say, I feel I have authorization to do this, and that's great until he gets arrested. And it's sad because Robert is somebody I respect greatly, but he's doing something that I find so distasteful it's not even funny. But as an industry, we don't have a standard that we can hold people to and say, this is okay, this is not. And since everybody's ethics is so different, that runs into problems. It's actually what I talked about with James Jardine. Today, we did our talk about trying to come up with a way to regulate ourselves, right? Because if we don't do it, the government's gonna. Congress has already started talking about modifying laws and updating laws with regards to pen testing and security and what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I think we're in a situation where if we don't stand up and say, this is good, this is bad, and we're going to handle this ourselves, it's going to be enforced upon us, and the people enforcing it upon us don't understand anything about technology.
So I was at your talk, and is this some kind of movement you want to get started within the community? I mean, you mentioned like a law board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hesitate to call it a movement because it's a couple guys hanging around going, wow, this sucks, let's fix it. And but it's a conversation, I would say. We need to have the conversation. And right now we're herding cats, right? I don't think it's right to scan the internet and run arbitrary code, but Robert Graham says, well, it's okay because it's public. And Weave says, let me go to a non-extradition country, and all of this kind of stuff. It needs to be a movement. It needs to be a process, right? But we have to start at the conversation, and we need to have a whole bunch of people, and we're not all going to agree. And you may think I'm an ass, and oops, sorry, and and I may think wear funny socks. But if we don't at least start coming up with the framework, we're going to fail, and when we fail, like I said, it's going to be enforced upon us, and we're not going to like it, and we're going to whine and pout and piss and moan, but the reality is it'll be too late. So, not a movement yet, but hey, let's try it.
But you're talking to people.
I'm trying, and this is the second time I've presented this talk. This is the first time James was able to be with me. We started this at B-Sides Orlando, and we got a lot of good feedback. Lots of people are interested. Lots of people are, hey, you're right, we have to do something. But then it just kind of,
fizzles a little bit.
Let me go to the party tonight and drink some and dance around and listen to some music and forget about it tomorrow. So
maybe you need a team of like-minded individuals to have some kind of a committee or conference together.
Now you're making it formal.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's needed. We registered infosecbar.com just because of the idea of, and I know that the bar is run by the government and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not saying that, but the idea of having professionals from the field say, this is the standards we're going to hold our peers to, and our peers agree to it, and there's a process and everything else like that. And so, I think we do need to get, a group of people of different mindsets together and have a summit.
Right. A summit is a better word.
Yeah.
You question, is there really a shortage of InfoSec people in the field? Okay, or are we just misusing the manpower that we have in our orgs?
Yeah, we hear all the time. Alan Paller has talked quite a bit. We have a shortage of information security people. The government agencies say we don't have enough security people. Every vendor at this show, including myself, are hiring right now, right?
Yeah.
And we have all these security things going on, and everybody's like, oh, we don't have enough security people, we don't have enough security people. And James had brought up a great point, and I agree with him 100%, is that we have these resources of QA people and IT people and security people and everybody, that if we just started to really get people to realize that what we do as security testers is just specialized QA, right? If you have your QA person do the testing I do, they're going to get that low-hanging fruit at the very least. And if we start making use of the resources we already have in place, I think what we're going to find is we may have, maybe, a lack of specialized pen testers or a lack of specialized forensics people. But we won't need as many of them because everybody's going to realize it's part of their job. And that's what James and I really want to get across with regards to that.
So sort of find creative ways for QA, your example, to be involved, like using things like rat proxy.
Yeah. It is get QA to understand that they're supposed to use something like rat proxy or burp or whatever, and when they go through and they test, if I put $20 there, does it add to the cart correctly? Okay, now test if I put negative $20 there, right? What happens?
Refine their testing suite.
Exactly. Yeah. All we're doing is adding inputs, right? Yeah. The inputs that I use to test an application at that level, right? Obviously, business logic and all these really complex things, that's the specialized testing, right? But the simple, put a script tag in here and see if it comes back. Put a single quote in there, see if you get an error message. QA should be doing that. Your developers should be doing that, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we get that idea of, if we train people that it's part of their job and that security is not this separate, scary group, we're going to see a huge benefit in the security of the world. And we've seen it with our customers, right? We have customers who have brought security out of that silo, that we hate you all and you suck mentality, and brought it out to, hey, Joe the sales guy and Sue the IT programmer and whatever, security is important, and they start testing it and evaluating it and making it part of their process. As it moves through, everything gets better. Everything. And not just security, but your app's going to perform better, you're not going to have as many bugs, things are going to work because people are putting more thought around what they're doing. It's not just this, stand it up and move on.
Kevin, thank you.
No problem, man. Thank you very much. I'm honored you to have me on.